Our team consists of Firly Adrian Pratama with the number 121, Satya Kirana Chandra with the number 125, and me, Salsabila Kirana 128. Next, in this chapter, we are going to explain about why computer control and security are important, COVID, COSO, and ERM control frameworks. The third is about the major elements in the control environment of a company. The fourth is about the major elements in the control environment of a company. I'm sorry, I think it's double. The fifth is how to assess and respond to risks using the enterprise risk management or ERM mode. And the next is about control activities. And the last is about how to communicate information and monitor control processes in organizations. The next um, slide is going to be explained by Firly. Firly, time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Salsa. Please, next slide. Before we start the other sub material, I think we must know why threats to accounting information system are increasing because it's important to be known. Uh, the first one is because company fail to controlling the security and integrity of their computer system. In the book, it's dijelaskan bahwa information is available an unprecedented number of workers. Dicontohkan bahwa Chevron itu punya 35 akun atau bisnis yang bahkan yang uh, workersnya itu nggak sampai 7. Kemudian ada information on distributed computer network is hard to control. Terus customer and supplier have access to each order system and data. Nah, selain itu juga many organization have some reason to not adequately protected data. Salah satunya ada yaitu some companies view the loss of crucial information as a distant unlikely threat. Kemudian many company do not realize that information is a strategic resource and that protecting must be a strategic requirement. And the others. Salsa, please next slide. So the first one is overview of control concept. Control concept is, I think, it in different word is internal control. The process internal control is the process implemented to provide reasonable assurance that the control objectives are achieved. Next slide. So what is the control objectives? There are many control objectives. Number one is safeguard asset, prevent or detect their unnoticed acquisition, use or disposition. Number two is maintain record in sufficient detail. Number three, provide accurate and reliable information. Number four, prepare financial report in accordance with established criteria. Number five is promote and improve operational effectively. Number six, ensure adherence to prescribed managerial policies. Number seven, comply with applicable laws and regulations. Please, next slide. And the important function of internal control is number one is preventive control, deter problem before they arise. Number two is detective control, is discover problems that are not prevented. And number three is corrective control, that's it identify and correct problem as well as correct and recover from the resulting error. Next slide, Salsa. in Arn's book, in Pim, there are two internal control categories. The number one is general control. It makes sure an organization control environmental, stable, and well managed. Example include security, IT, infrastructure, and software acquisition, development, and maintenance control. And the categories two is application control, prevent, detect, and correct transaction error and fraud and application program. They are concerned with the accuracy, completeness, validity, and authorization of the data captured, entered, processed, stored, transmitted to other system, and reported. Next slide, please. After we know about internal control, there are the foreign core practice and surveillance and auxiliary fact. I think in the book is membahas tentang sejarahnya dari uh, internal control, di mana sampai ada kejadian Amerika itu terkena denda gara-gara sistem internal control yang atau aturan regulasi terkait internal control yang kurang bagus. Kemudian sampai dibentuk atau Sarbanes-Oxley itu mengeluarkan beberapa pembaruan atau aturan baru yang mana SOX is the most important business oriented legalization in the last 80 years. It changed the way board of director and management operate and had a dramatic impact on CPA who audit them. The following are some of the most important aspect of laws. Number one is, jadi yang paling penting isi dari SOX regulasinya adalah tentang Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, PCAOB. Kemudian ada juga new rules for auditor. Number three is new rules for audit committees. Number 4 is new rules for management, and number 5 is new internal control requirement. Kemudian, please next slide. It's the listen consideration rule control framework. In this section, we will discuss three framework used to develop internal control system. The number one is please next slide, Sasa. There are COVID framework. Nah, COVID framework, the Information System Audit and Control Association (ASACA) developed the control objectives for information and related technology, namely COVID framework. Nah, this principle help organizations to build an effective governance and management to protect stakeholder investment and produce the best possible information system. Please next slide. So this is in one. This and another process to make system allegation, plan, and organize good. Jadi di sini manajemen objectives itu dia ada kegiatan APO, BAI, BSS, and MEA. Sedangkan governance objectives yaitu lebih ke evaluate, direct, and monitor. Jadi seperti itu. Kemudian next slide. Proses governance of enterprise IT. Jadi ini yang lebih luas atau lebih luasnya. Monitor, evaluate, and assess. Juga alignment dan organisasi itu isinya ngapain aja. Terus ada build, acquire, and implement itu dia nanti ngapain aja. Kemudian ada deliver and support itu juga ngapain aja. Terus seperti yang dari bagiannya governance tadi itu ada monitor effort and access, itu juga di situ diperinci lagi semuanya. Kemudian tulis next slide Salsa. Next, uh, framework is process internal control framework. Process internal control framework is committee of sponsored organization, a private sector group consisting of the association, the ICT, the Institute of Auditor, and the Institute of Management Agency. Financial Executive Institute. Internal Control Integrated Framework IC. A causal framework that defines internal control and provides it for evaluating and changing internal control system. Next slide. There are the 5 components and 17 principles of the IC framework. The first component is control activities, risk assessment, control environmental, information and communication, and monitoring. The new IC framework takes the first component, only the first that of the original framework, and adds 17 principles that build on the support of the company. Yang mana 17 itu juga bagian dari masing-masing 5 itu nanti bisa dikuti-kuti menjadi frameworknya. I think it's enough for me. It will be continued by my friend. Thank you.
Okay, the next is the control environment. What is the control environment? The control environment is the company culture that foundation for all other internal control components, as it influences how organization establish strategies and objectives, structure business activities, and identify, assess, and respond to risks. There are 7 the control environment. The first is management philosophy, operating style, and risk appetite. The second is commitment to integrity, ethical values, and competence. The third is internal control, oversight by the board of directors. Next is organizational structure. Next is method of assigning authority and responsibility. Human resource standard that attract, develop, and retain competent individual, and then terakhir external influence. The first, management philosophy, operating style, and risk appetite. Basically, company has a philosophy or shared belief and attitude about risks that affect policies, procedure, oral or written communication, and decision. Company also have a risk appetite, which is the amount of risk they are willing to accept to achieve their goals. To avoid undue risk, risk appetite must be in alignment with company strategy. Next is commitment to integrity, ethical values, and competence. Organization need a culture that stress integrity and commitment to ethical values and competence. Ethical standards are good for business. Integrity start at the top as company employee, and then adopt top management attitude about risk and control. A powerful message is sent when the CEO confronted with the difficult decision, makes the ethically correct choice. And then how company endorse integrity. The first is developing a written code of conduct that explicit explicitly describe honest and dishonest behavior, then put process in a place to use the company code of conduct to evaluate individual and team performance and address any deviation in a timely and consistent manner. And then actively teaching and requiring the code of conduct, avoiding unrealistic expectations or incentives that motivate dishonest or illegal acts, consistently rewarding honesty and giving verbal label to honest and dishonest behavior, requiring employee to report dishonest or illegal act, and disciplining employees who knowing fail to report, make, and making a commitment to competence. Companies should hire competent employees with the necessary knowledge, experience, training, and skill. The next is internal control oversight by the board director. An involved board of director represent shareholder and provide an independent review of management and act as a check and balance on its action. It's important that the board approve company strategy and review security policies. The board should also evaluate management and management decision making. To do so, the board needs members with the skill and expertise necessary to ask senior management about probing questions. They also need enough members who are independent of management so the board can objectively evaluate them. The public companies required to have an audit committee of outside independent director. So the audit committee is responsible for financial reporting, regulatory compliance, internal control, and hiring an external auditor who report all critical accounting policies and practice to them. Selanjutnya nomor 4, organizational structure. A company organizational structure provide a framework for planning, executing, controlling, and monitoring operation. There are important aspects of the organization structure include the following: centralization or decentralization of authority. Next is a direct or matrix reporting relationship. Next is organization by industry, product line, location, or marketing network. Next is how allocation or responsibility affect information requirement, organization of the line of authority for accounting, auditing, and information system function, the size and nature of company activities. Number 5 is method of assigning authority and responsibility. Management should make sure employee understand entity about goals and objectives, and then assign authority and responsibility for goals and objectives to department and individual. Hold the individual accountable for achieving, and then encourage the use of initiative to solve problems. It's especially important to identify who is responsible for the company information and security policy. Authority and responsibility are assigned and communicated using formal job description, employee training, operating schedule, budget, a code of conduct, and written policies and procedure. The written policies and procedure is explain about proper business practice, describe needed knowledge and experience, and then explain document procedure and how to handle transaction, and the last is list the resource provided to carry out the specific duties. Number 6, human resource standard that attract, develop, and retain competent individual. One of the greatest control strength is the honesty of employee, and weakness one greatest control weakness is the dishonesty of employee. Human resource policies and practice governing working conditions, job incentives, and career advancement can be a powerful force in encourage honesty, efficiency, and loyal service. Human resource policies should convey the required level of expertise, competence, ethical behavior, and integrity required. The following human resource policies and procedures are important. They are plan and prepare for succession. Next is hiring, then compensating and evaluating and promoting, then training. Number 5 is managing disgruntled employee. Number 6 is discouraging. Number 7 is vacation and rotation of duties. Then number 8, confidentiality agreement and fidelity bond insurance. Then last is prosecutive and incarcerate operator. Then the last about external influence. External influence include requirement imposed by stock exchange, the Financial Accounting Standard Board, the PCAOB, and the SEC. They also include requirement imposed by regulatory agencies such as those for bank, utilities, and insurance companies. Risk assessment and risk response. Management is responsible for identifying and assessing the threat the company faces. This should include an assessment of all threats, include natural and political disaster, software error, equipment failure, unintentional acts, and the possibility of intentional acts such as fraud. The risks of unidentified threat are assessed in several different ways, like likelihood, positive and negative impact, individually and by category, their effect on the other organizational unit, and on an inherent and a residual basis. To align identified risks with the company tolerance for the risk, management must take an entity-wide view of risk. They must assess risk likelihood and impact as well as the cost and benefit of the alternative response. Management can respond to risk in one of four ways. The first is reduce the likelihood and impact of risk by implementing an effective system of internal control. The second is accept is the likelihood and impact of the risk. Then the next is share risk or transfer it to someone else by buying insurance, outsourcing an activity, or entering into the hedging transaction. The last is avoid risk by not engaging in the activity that produces the risk. This may require the company to sell a division, exit a product line, or not expand as anticipated. Response strategy. The following strategy the company can take to assess the risk is the first is estimate likelihood and impact. Some threats pose a greater risk because they are more likely to occur, and then software tools help automate risk assessment and response. An overall corporate assessment of risk is developed by aggregating all the rankings. The next is identify control. Management should identify controls that protect the company from its threat. Preventive control are usually superior to detective controls. When the preventive control fails, the detective controls are essential for discovering the problem. Corrective control helps the recover from any problem. A good internal control system should employ all the three. And estimate cost and benefit. The objective in designing an internal control system is to provide reasonable assurance that threats do not take place. No internal control system provides foolproof protection against all threats because having too many control is cost prohibitive and negatively affect operational efficiency. The next is determine cost or benefit effectiveness. Management should determine whether a control is a cost beneficial or not. In the evaluating internal control, management must consider factors other than those in the expected cost or benefit calculation. For example, if something threatens an organization existence, its extra cost can be viewed as a catastrophic loss insurance premium. Then the last is implement, control, or accept, share, or avoid the risk. Cost-effective control should be implemented to reduce risk. Risk not reduced must be accepted, shared, or avoided. Risk can be accepted is within the company risk tolerance range. A company may choose to avoid the risk when the risk is not cost-effective way to bring risk into an acceptable risk tolerance range.
Okay, the next is about control activities. So by the definition, control activities are policies, procedures, and rules that provide reasonable assurance that control objectives are met and risk responses are carried out. So actually, control activities is a responsibility of management. Management have responsibility to develop and secure and also adequately control the system. That's why the management should take or should pay attention to one, controls are selected and developed to help reduce risks to an acceptable level, and the second, the management appropriate should also know that control activities is appropriate general controls are selected and developed over technology. And the third is control activities are implemented and followed as specified in company policies and procedures. Next, the management is responsible to develop the control activities. I'm sorry. And the next, um, the one who is responsible about control procedures is the information security officer and the operations staff. The control procedures fall into the following categories. The first is proper organization of transactions and activities. The second is segregation of duties. The third is project development and acquisition controls. The fourth is change management controls. The fifth is design and use of documents and reports. The sixth is safeguarding assets, reports, and data. And the seventh is independent checks and performance. Next. Next, please. Okay. The next is about the explanation of the control activities procedures. The first is proper organization of transactions and activities. So, by the definition, organization is an establishing policies for employees to follow and then empowering them to perform certain organizational functions. It is often documented by signing in email initially initially I'm sorry, initializing or entering an authorization code on a document or report. So the activities of this organization is like digital signature, specific authorization, and general authorization. The second is segregation of duties. So, in a company who has good internal controls, It usually requires that no single employee be given too much responsibility, so they will not have opportunity to commit fraud. The segregation of duties is divided into two. The first one is segregation of accounting duties, and the second is segregation of system duties. The first one is segregation of accounting duties, is separating the accounting function. It's like organization, recording, and custody. The second is segregation of system duties. It's clearly and divide authority and responsibility within the information system function. It's usually separate. The first one is the authorization, the second is data entry, programming, operations, data storage, users, and also management. The third is about project development and acquisition controls. For its important systems development controls include the following. The first one is a steering committee. Second is a strategic master plan. The third is a project development plan. The fourth is a data processing schedule. The fifth is system performance measurements. The sixth is a post implementation review. Next, the fourth procedures is change management controls. So actually organizations also modify existing systems to reflect new business practices and to take advantage of IT advancement. The next is about design and use of documents and records. So proper design and use of electronic and paper documents and records help ensure the accurate and complete recording of all relevant transaction data. The form and content should be as simple as possible, minimize errors, and facilitate review and verification. The next is about safeguarding assets, records, and data. So a company must protect its cash and physical assets as well as its information. Computer-based controls that help safeguard assets is important. So we should do these things. The first one is create and enforce appropriate policies and procedures. Next is maintain accurate records of all assets. And the next is restrict access to assets. And the next is protect records and documents. The next procedures is independent checks on performance. So independent checks on performance done by someone other than the person who performs the original operation. It helps ensure that transactions are processed accurately. So the one who do these independent checks on performance is the first top level reviews. The second is analytical reviews. The third is reconciliation of independently maintained records. And the next is comparison of actual quantities with recorded amounts. And the next is double entry accounting. The next is independent review. Next slide, please. Okay, the next um, explanation is about communicate information and monitor control processes. The first one is information and communication. So, information and communication systems should capture and exchange the information needed to conduct, manage, and control the organization's operation. The updated IC or Information and Communication Framework specifies that the following three principles apply to the information and communicate process is explained below. The first one is obtain or generate relevant high-quality information to support internal control. The second is internally communicate the information, including objectives and responsibilities necessary to support the other components of internal control. The third is communicate relevant internal control matters to external parties. The second is about monitoring. Our internal control system that is selected or developed must be continuously monitored, evaluated, and modified as needed. Any deficiencies must be reported to senior management and the board of directors. The key methods of monitoring performance is there is 10 key methods of monitoring performance. The one is perform internal control evaluations. The second is implement effective supervision. The third is use responsibility accounting system. The fourth is monitor system activities. The fifth is track purchase software and mobile devices. The sixth is conduct periodic audits. The seventh is employ a computer security officer and chief compliance officer. And the next is engage forensic specialists. The next is install fraud detection software. And the last is implement a fraud hotline. Next. So that's all from our explanation about chapter 10. We are sorry for our mistake. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.